Hi, I'll introduce myself. I think everyone knows me, but you never know. My name is Dan, I'm superintendent here. Tonight we're going to do this is the presentation, a little bit about Common Core. Carrie Matthews, teacher here, she's the presentation. We got through a lot of hard work into this. What we wanted to do was we wanted to put something together in the fall. For one reason or another, it didn't happen. So this is going to be kind of like a pilot tonight, and we'll, based on feedback we get, we'll add to it for the fall, hopefully around open house time next year, and so we can improve what we're doing. But by no means do I think that the timing of this is perfectly what we wanted, but at the same time, it's one of the things we wanted to do, and so here we are. And like I said, Terry put a lot of time into this. I'll be covering a couple of the items, but for the most part, I want to give the floor to Carrie.
Thank you all very much for coming to the spaghetti dinner as well. We are here again just for general information about the Common Core. And then the schedule tonight is just the presentation, and then Mr. Hunter will facilitate questions and answers. We do have faculty that reaches K-12. So if you have any grade-specific content questions, there are people here to be able to answer that for you. And then, since it's a retreat, so maybe that'll happen by then. Again, this is just our opportunity to inform you about some myths and legends around Common Core. The first is the Common Core State Standards. It is a federal policy. In 2009, the National Government Association, along with the Council of Chief State Officers, met to create national standards across the country. In 2010, they released the final standards, and then in 2014, 43 states are following those standards. If you go to this website, here is their website. This is where the majority of the information came from. Again, it is a federal adopted policy, created again to align education across the country. So a lot of people do move around, but if someone left OB and moved out to Alabama or over to Idaho, you would leave and your student and child would be able to pick up right where they left off without creating any gap between the moves. But this is the website. Again, they do have a parent should know. They even have a myth. If we scroll down. Same thing, just things you should know, what the standards are, the process and procedure. So there is that website. So again, the goal is consistency across the United States. They have two subsets under that. The first is the lovely catchphrase, college and career ready. That is the specific skills that this group believe you need to be successful either in the college career track or if you went straight to the work field right after graduation of high school. So it's kind of like the big ticket skills they need. And then comes the K-12 standards, which is elementary and high school, where they started up top and then worked backwards in a sense of a spiral staircase. So I'd use math as an example with fractions. Fractions start in kindergarten, first grade. What's the numerator? What's the denominator? And then fractions stay all the way up through 12th grade. But obviously build upon that. You go to adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and you work your way up. That happens in all the topics. Same thing with ELA. We ask questions right from the get-go, but then we expect you to be able to answer more questions and higher order questions, the why and the hows, not just the who's and the what. Same thing with writing. Most students, kindergarten, first grade, they're not able to really write. They're learning how to spell words. They're writing sentences, and then that just keeps elaborating. Into sixth grade, we expect 5 to 7 paragraphs, each holding good, solid 5 to 7 sentence paragraphs. So again, that's how that works up. So there's the two components to create the consistency across the country. This created major changes. Again, this is from the website at the federal level. In ELA, there was kind of a change to start using certain vocabulary, academic vocabulary. A lot of times, I know I'm in the 6th grade class right now, we're doing a lot of claim and evidence. You got to come up with claims, you got to have the evidence. and everything with that. So that's kind of what the academic vocabulary is in complex text. And then text-based evidence, that is where they already are learning how to quote and cite from the actual text they're reading as the evidence. There is inference that they can create and bring in their own opinion still, but it's very much based what page did you get it from, where did that come from, and how does it support your major claim. And then comes the building through content-rich nonfiction. I would say that's probably the biggest change that I've seen in the ELA, in the classrooms that I've worked in, where there is pretty much just nonfiction. There's fiction kind of mixed in as a choice just for pleasure reading and to go into those with novels, but there was a big switch to do more nonfiction text in ELA, not just in social studies and science, where most nonfiction already exists. And then there was changes in math. They pushed for greater focus on fewer topics, a coherence across grade levels. So again, like I used that spiral staircase to have it more established of what grade does what when and how it builds up. And then rigor. Procedural skills and fluency, so they do learn, like learn the alphabet, they learn their math facts, but then it's within the application of skills. So it's both. Any questions so far about the federal policies? No? Okay. So then comes Common Core Learning Standards. And this is the New York State policy. They couldn't really change the name to make it clear and consistent. This is New York State. But this is where it is their adaptation off of the federal standards. In 2010, it was adapted and created from Common Core State Standards, which is the federal, to the Common Core Learning Standards, which is New York State curriculum. And they wanted to do full implementation by 2013-2014, so that was last year. And we refer to it is called the module. So most often you'll hear it referred to as the mod, is the nickname that's been coined. And I'm going to actually go to that website as well. EngageNewYork.org is the website from the state. This is what it looks like. It has gotten better from last year. It makes sense for the most part with formatting. Still a little tricky. They do have a bunch of resources, and this is where the majority of our teaching pulls off of this. Curriculum's on here, workbooks, readers. So there's different topics, as you can see. A lot of this stuff is just information about the Common Core, statistics, video library, videos on how to do things for the Common Core. Professional development would be us teachers, and then parents and family is where there is a parent toolkit. Let's see, this is the fun part. This is what exists. So you just click on it, tells you if it's a resource. You can search for keywords. If you go over here, though, this is where it lets you search. If you click on, if you really are interested in ELA, let it load. And then you have a 4th grade student. Here's your parent resource for those. If you don't, and you click off parent resource and just go to Engage and type in any word, and same thing if you just come over here, we're still in ELA, 4th grade student. I don't know why this is only showing 2 results. They've changed it already on me. But most times you can find different things, but this is the best filter. So you come over and you just have to keep letting it load. What is it? Resource. No, you changed it. This is what I want. The Guide to the Common Core Standards. So this is a parent's guide, and this is what I needed. Where you click on all these different things, and it kind of explains the Common Core more for New York State and the adaptation, and just gives more information about this.
Parent's Guide to Student Success, right there. So
So this is on everything about PTA. This leads to another organization. So again, this is just an online resource for you to use. And like I said, most teachers, I'm on it quite often. So that's the state. Was there any questions about the state and the website or how it's adapted? Like I said, New York is one of the 43 states. So again, they've taken and they've pretty much made a government curriculum. There's always been curriculum books that have been used. There was always standards, but now they've just changed it and it's a government issued curriculum. So with that though, and that's to explain where it's falling in grades K2, the mods are in the ELA. They do another program, walk to read. The mods in this school are not done all day, every day. There are primary instructional focus, but then, like I said, if you move up in math, we do a Go Math. It's another curriculum that was purchased by the school that we use as a supplement. Again, that program is towards National Common Core alignment. Science and social studies is still off the New York State standards that have existed. Same thing in 7th and 8th grade. There's more to Driven Forest. Those teachers shared. They use Connect Math and they do other teacher resources for ELA. Science, social studies is coming next year, switching over to the Common Core. Science, so is still
Up in the air.
To be seen what happens with science. So then in the high school, again, ELA is in transition currently. Last year, students there's two options that were provided. You could take the new Common Core regions or the standard New York State regions. Some students took one, some students took the other. It was the first year it was offered. This year, it's the same thing. Next year, so this year's current 10th grade will only take a Common Core region. They're filtering out New York State traditional regencies in the ELA. Math currently is algebra and geometry are the New York State Common Core testing, and then trigonometry is switching over in the near future. Science, yes, to be determined. Social studies, same thing. This current year they'll take the standard New York State regions. Next year is when they'll switch over to a Common Core. The difference, though, to explain that, the 3-8 Common Core assessments in ELA and math will take place in April. The Common Core for the high school will still take place during Regents Weeks, what we consider Regents Weeks, at the end of the school in June. That is not changing. Any questions on any of that? Yeah.
So the Common Core region, or for that matter, the region Common Core test. You know how you're saying this, I know this about it across the state.
Right.
So are the tests so given in New York State?
Yeah.
So once we give like the Common Core region, that will not be given, the same test will not be available in Iowa?
Yep, correct.
Just here.
Correct.
Is that true?
The Regents exams, yeah, New York, they're unique to ours, but they're based on the Common Core standards.
Right.
That's true. And there was talk a few years back about eliminating the January Regents Week. Ironically, they're actually adding to the January Regents Week and the August Regents Week. Like in years past, they haven't offered like chemistry in the summer and things like that. They're talking about actually offering more of the Regencies in the summertime. And June right now is the only Regents period where everything is offered. So a few years back when they were talking about limiting things, now they're talking about actually bringing more in. So I guess as the world turns on that.
Yes, because it was each state had the right to adapt it however they wanted to. They said like, yes, we're doing this. Yes, there are probably tests in other states, whether they give them in April. That's not a federal thing. It's just the state's way to test their progression in the labs. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
The students can still get the Regents diploma, though, whether if they take the Common Core Regents or so there was two different Regents they could take for the...
There's a phase-in period. There's a phase-in period, and for right now, what the state is allowing us to do, like, I'll use algebra for an example from last year. There was the Common Core, and then there was the traditional algebra regions. I say traditional, it's only been around for a couple of years because they keep changing the math curriculum. But last year, the kids were allowed to take both tests, and then the test they score higher on, they actually get that score on their transcript. So it's not like, we actually had a student last year at the ELA regions in 11th grade, it's Mr. Corpez's class. They actually scored it higher on the Common Core test. And there's some kids, it's just that one rings a bell off the top of my head, that they get the higher score. And on the transcript, it doesn't say Common Core English, it just says ELA regions. Because the bottom line is, they're just semantic names. In a couple of years, the algebra regions, it's just the Common Core curriculum. But right now, it says algebra Common Core curriculum, algebra New York State traditional standards, whatever they say right now. As soon as the old tests are phased out, I'm assuming they'll probably drop the Common Core names to go along with them. But right now, they're given both. Like this year in English, once more they'll get both tests, but they'll phase the old test out in the next few years. And different curriculums have different phase outs, and eventually it'll be all the Common Core curriculum. But for the kids that are living this golden era, I mean, quite honestly, we had a kid actually struggling past the math regions. They got 2 chances in June, when traditionally they only get 1 chance. So it actually, from this point of view, it actually benefits kids to get that Regents diploma.
Okay.
So then this is just a compilation of just suggestions that I know some people are like, well, what do we do? The Common Core does do things differently than how even I remember learning to read and do math. But if you can just, any type of reading, PTO purchase story, which we have been trying to roll out to the students and families. So that's an option. Just any book, newspapers, magazines. The biggest thing would also be the questioning that you can ask, specifically more the higher order. Like I said, if you do a for or what that's very text-based, and you ask, well, why do you think that? What's the connection? How do you do that? Or how does this work? Can you think of another way that you can make connections? Those are more of the focused questions that are already starting in kindergarten and first grade of why. Why is this the way that is? Flashcards, a lot of it, math fluency, I know is talked about quite often, is just to do flashcards to make, multiplication, addition, subtraction, and division, just the basics. But also spelling and just vocab for sight words, where it's just, it has to be that automatic, we can just look at it and know. As well as homework. Homework does go home quite often. Different amounts for different levels. Again, it is meant to be independent. Helping is not doing, which I know is struggling now, and I know that's the biggest thing is what gets at home, because like I said, we're in this kind of conundrum of things have changed even from how I have a calculator on my side when I'm teaching some math to make sure I'm teaching them right and get the right answers, the way that the mods are trying to expand thinking and ways to solve the problems. But then the biggest thing is just to check for completion, and we've been finding if you can make sure it's back in a folder in the backpack to make its way back to school, somehow that trail, they'll say, no, I left it at home, okay, or it's always just in their locker, and we do our best, I know, on our efforts to make sure they have it in their possession. And we have, I think everyone in the elementary, we do have planning worksheets where we assign, fill everything out. So you do know it should be written down and copied if there was homework assigned. And then there's also just hands-on craft. I know from that point, anything tactile, whether it's coloring, drawing, making a card, making a book, journaling, and then positive support and encouragement. Again, questions about school, you could also do, what did you learn in math today, or what did you learn different in reading today, what did you learn different in art today? And do a specific and says, hey, how was your day at school? Okay. And then a separate question you can ask is, depending on their response, well, why do you think that? Again, I hit on why, because that's where it goes to a different, they have to create reasoning and make the connection. Limiting technology, that's always fun. I know the iPads come home for homework, but like the computers, the video games, if that can be limited. That's always a great thing to do for the kids. Sleep, 8 to 12 hours is recommended. I thought it was like 6 to 10, and then when I spoke to our nurse this morning, she was like, no, it's actually very higher, 8 to 12 for all the age groups. And then, same thing, call or email to school. School Messenger we have now, so it's pretty easy for us to get information to you guys in the community. However, we still, if you call, email, all of our email addresses are up on the website. And it's pretty much our first initial, our last name at obcs.org. Some of the longer names, teachers, I know, have it cut off at a certain point. And then attendance. That seems to be something too that we tend to struggle with a little bit with students on the regular not coming to school. And that's just challenging because it is hard with the schedule and how everything works. It is difficult to catch students up when they've missed, especially when they're consistently missing days or even weeks at a time. They're not naturally here to learn, but they just fall behind because of the workload just multiplies and snowballs. So that's always the biggest suggestion is to get students here. And then, Mr. Daniel, your turn.
Okay. State testing, yeah. See, I'm going to go a little off topic, and I'm going to bring it back. So every day when I walk out the door, my daughter watches, God knows what on the TV. It used to be when she was little watching cartoons. Now she watches Josh and Drake. But every day, kiss her on the forehead. Have a good day. Do your best. Talk to my wife for a few minutes. Pack up my lunch. Give her a kiss. Get in the car. Pretty much, that's the way, what I do. So I always want her to do her best every day she goes to school. And my message, 180 days a year, do your best, you go to school. And philosophically, I'm not going to say even my wife and I agree on everything that happens in schools and things like that. We have a lot of conversations. She's a teacher. So it's pretty interesting, some of our conversations at times. And so basically, where I'm going with this is, believe it or not, there are people that are families that are firmly against field days. They're firmly against Halloween. I believe in parent choice. And if a parent calls, when I was a principal, a parent calls me up and says, I don't want my kid at a Halloween party. I don't want my kid, be exposed to kids that are dressing up. My message was, geez, well, the whole school is going to be in a parade, and they're all going to be down to the gym, and the kids are going to be having fun. And if you feel that strongly about it, I'm going to keep my kid home. That's great. I don't get into that parent choice. And some people feel, believe it or not, the same thing about field days. Now, wrap your head around it. I think field days is an awesome day. I think that the Halloween parade and some of the things we do here is a real fun day for kids. But I'm going to go back to, I believe in that parent choice. And if you want to keep your kid home on a certain day, that's what we do. The teachers spend an awful lot of time, and they plan out every day, 180 days a year. We try to support them the best we can to give our kids the best education for 180 days a year. And there might be a different activity from time to time that a parent feels that they want to keep their kid home for. Maybe they come get them, maybe they bring them in late for whatever reason. And we've always tried to support those situations. What I don't support is the person that says, well, we don't celebrate Christmas in our house, and all the kids are having fun, and then you say to me, well, you just tell them to go sit in the corner and read a book. Well, all the other kids are having fun. Well, that's not the way it works. If you send them to school, it's our program, and we're going to do that. And if you want, and if you don't want them doing that, then just don't come to school that day or do that. And along those lines, there are 6 days, 3 days of the ELA testing, there are 3 days of the math testing. I'm not giving these tests, quite honestly, because I want to give these tests. Giving these tests because New York State tells me we're going to give these tests on these 3 days in ELA and these 3 days in math. And, I take an oath every year, the superintendent of schools, but not only do I take an oath, every person that has a professional certificate takes an oath that they're going to uphold the request of the New York State Education Department when they get their certificate. And You know, and that's what we do. And that's what we do. And, you know, and I read things that are going on within the legislature right now. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of people talking about changing this and changing that. And, you know, people ask me the what-if question all the time. It's an easy answer, the what-if question. When the law changes, we will adapt to what the state says that we need to do. And I'm going to go back to the oath that I took and the oath that every professional employee here took. We're going to follow those laws. We're going to follow those rules. But right now, we are absolutely following those laws and following those rules. I feel really good about it. I feel really good that when I say to a kid that you're going to do your best every day, and I want teachers to praise kids for doing their best every day. And, you know, I'm not really big on telling a kid, do your best except these 6 days, or do your best except those 2 days. I think it's a difficult message. Rachel and I went to a forum a couple weeks ago in Sherburne, and there was a presenter, and he was very well spoken, and he talked about the impact of these different curriculums and how different generations have been affected by different things. And he did really, I liked his presentation, and he had some interesting insights on the effects of the kids in 2000, believe it or not, this street testing started around 2001. And in 1998, I was still in the math, I was a teacher in the math classroom. There was 4th and 8th grade math and English tests. So, you know, so this isn't new. The new part with, and the new part with the state is, for the first time, they connect the teacher evaluation with the federal laws and things like that, which that created a lot of the issues that we're seeing, and it created a lot of the animosity. 3-8 testing isn't new, okay? The curriculum name has changed, but quite honestly, the length of the tests have changed a little bit. But they were 2- and 3-day tests before in the past. So, well, as we dig into where we're at right now, I hear a lot of things that are going on in Albany, a lot of things that could be changing, but primarily, I take my oath really serious, and I'm hoping all of our teachers take that oath real serious. We're doing what we've been charged to do by New York State, and that has nothing to do with maybe some of my personal beliefs, but that's our job. With that being said, I will take questions. I think it's fair for you to open up to questions. So, ask me.
So basically what you're saying, we don't agree, we don't want our children to take every test. We can keep them home, and when we write the excuse, we can write it out as I cannot finish my Bible test for your record.
Yes, it's not a legal excuse, but it's not a legal excuse to keep them home on Halloween Day and things like that. But it's something like, you know, you miss, I had to look it up, and don't quote me on this, but you miss so many consecutive days, we call CPS. And, you know, you have so many absences in a year, we have to call CPS, and things like that. For most people, when they have a belief that, you know, and you put it in writing, I don't believe for this reason, and your kids have a good attendance record, quite honestly, you know, we're going to put it in a folder, mark the kid as an unexcused absence, and we're moving on. That's it. That's it. That's simple. I want to keep it simple. It's as simple as the Halloween parade that you don't want your kid in, or the field days, or the Christmas party that you don't want your kid to attend. But it's something that we do with most of the kids in school, and that's just part of what we do. Absolutely. And there are some things thematically we have to do when they're absent, but I would probably approach one of your children, or I would approach a school official, and they're just going to say, hey, are you sure you don't want to take the test? All they do is they say no, they go back to class, and it's done.
If we notify you ahead of time, we don't want them to sit for it, you will still go and ask them if they want to sit for the test?
Yes, because it is not a parent refusal, it is a student refusal. And we have to abide by the rules that have been put in front of us. It's real simple. If you send a note saying Johnny was sick, we're assuming that I'm going to get a sub, I'm going to get somebody in there so that the student can be retested. You send me that note, it's as simple as a teacher going down and saying, hey, you're not planning on taking that test, right? And the kid says, no. Okay, have a good day. And that's how simple the conversation
So,
is.
but a 9-year-old isn't going to understand that. And my freshman teacher said, you missed the test, I want you to sit for it, come over here and take it. They're not going to know.
I'm gonna tell you, last year, the kids that the parents didn't want their kids to take it, 100% of those kids understood it, and even at the third grade level where they took the test. 100%. Right on the nose. And if you have a student that you're worried about that understanding, I would invite you in, and we can bring it down, and they can join you for that conversation. You know, it's very transparent. What my objective is on that, I want the kids back in class and learning as fast as possible. Okay, I don't want it to be a dog and pony show or anything like that. I want the kids left out of the politics. That's my objective. Kids left out of politics.
What happens with them opting out? Is that going to hurt us in the long run? Or coming back to the state?
Well, Mr. Burson and I have had a lot of conversations about this. It's just like they keep changing the colors, okay? And you don't know what the rules are. I can tell you that in theory, the way the rules are written right now, but they put some things in advance because, quite honestly, they don't know what to do. In theory, we're supposed to have 95% participation, okay? And there's multiple categories where you have this 95% participation, or you don't get what they call yearly progress, okay? AYP, okay? And if you don't have AYP, you get marked, and if you don't hit consecutive years, there's a bunch of things that happen to you, and they're negative, okay? They negatively impact the school, but there's so many schools because of the politics in the background, they really don't know what to do, okay, to be blunt. Now, let me go over what some of those categories are for us, because we're a little bit unique because we are small. I can't talk about an individual child, but I can talk about grade levels. Last year in third grade, we had under 25 kids. To be a subgroup, you have to have 25 students in a group or greater, okay? So last year, we had a group of third graders that did not test. Now, they figured into our total group into the 95%, but third grade did not have their own subgroup because they did not represent that they didn't have enough for their own group. Fourth grade had 28 students with that, okay? The dangerous thing about 28, 25 students, let's say 25 students for easy numbers, each kid is 4%. So as soon as 2 kids don't test, when we're as small as we are, we don't hit AYP. So in theory, with this movement going on, it's not unique for schools not to be hitting yearly annual progress. The unfortunate piece is that data is used by different groups. I'm going to give you an outside-the-box view of how people use this data. Realtors use our school report cards to sell properties in our district, to say, this is a great school, look at their school report card. And when on the school report card, there's a bunch of green checks, and then there's the red X's. Now, our kids could be doing just fine on the test, okay? But we have all those red X's, and we don't have annual progress, and that's a negative score for your school. It puts a dark shadow on everything that we do, and it's unfortunate. But what the state's doing is they're doing that pretty much across the board to a lot of schools. But I was talking to Superintendent Sydney, and they're probably 3 times the size as what we are. He told me last year they had 6 kids total opt out in different grades. So obviously that changes things and makes their school look an awful lot better when they can have that report card. The report card is public. Even though they put some of the repercussions in advance, the report card still is public. So it's unfortunate. I take a lot of pride in what we do. I think we are doing some real exciting things with kids here. We have awesome teachers that are doing some creative things. But it's disappointing to me that, because I like to brag about our school, it's disappointing to me that when you have a situation where, you know, somebody else is trying to brag up a piece of property, and they're between maybe buying a place here, or maybe they're buying a place in Casanova, or they're buying a place in, you know, Herkimer, for God's sake. I want them to bring the kids to our school, and but they're comparing them to report cards, and that's just the reality of that. Questions?
So with that though, and on a second note, since you mentioned politics, here is the Assembly and the State Senate. Their contact information, and then where to be the active citizen, we said we can't really change policies here until they change policies at the bigger level. This was sent out to with another letter that has gone out to the community. But again, if you want to, that'll stay up. That's the last slide. If there's no more other questions, Mr. Henry.
I can honestly say that I'm not the most politically correct person in some of these rooms when these people are there. I'm not afraid to speak my mind about some things that are going on in education. But I hope that the community isn't offended by the fact that when I go to some of these meetings, I'm not there to make friends. I'm there to advocate for our kids, advocate for our school. I want that school report card to look really good, and I want it to reflect the great things that we're doing in our school. And there are some really good superintendents out there that are doing some of these things. And I do think we're on the brink of some changes in the state, and I think there's a lot of good people out there doing a lot of good things. And anything that I can do to positively support that movement, I'm doing that. The one thing that is a cornerstone of my beliefs is I don't believe that second graders should be writing form letters to senators because they haven't had a chance to form those beliefs. We're trying to get kids to be free thinkers and to think for themselves. I don't know where the line is, but I do believe that, you know, as they get older, juniors and seniors writing letters to the people to represent them and to report what our schools are doing. I do think that they are at an age where they are ready to get involved in government and things that go along with that. And I don't know where the line is. You know, kids are starting to take these tests as third graders. I'm not really sure they're that free thinking. You know, and juniors and seniors, they're ready to go into the world. I don't know where that line is. And I think some of that goes back to parent choice. You know, at what point do you want to get your children involved in politics and teach them about politics? But I also believe that when kids come to school, I'm going to go back to how I started the story. Kiss my daughter on the forehead, tell her to have a great day, and do her best. And I hope that's the message that we give to our kids 180 days a year, every day they come to school. I firmly believe that needs to be the message. And as much as I'm not afraid to make friends, or not make friends in certain places, I feel pretty strong about that message as well. If there aren't any questions, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I really appreciate your interest. And if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to email me at any time. I believe my email address is on the district webpage. I would welcome any of those comments, questions, and you can also call me. I'd be more than happy to discuss any of these issues with you as well. Thank you. And thank you, Carrie.